I found my daughter-in-law's plane tickets to Paris, paid with my card. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife ever could. That night changed everything forever. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. My name is Margaret, and at 72 years old, I thought I knew what love looked like. I thought sacrifice meant caring. I thought giving everything meant being appreciated. How wrong I was. How terribly, painfully wrong. That October morning in my cramped Manhattan apartment, the radiator clanged its familiar song of another cold day ahead. Steam fogged my kitchen window, blurring the view of the building across the street where Mrs. Chen hung her laundry every Tuesday. The routine of my mornings had become as predictable as that steam: wake up, take my arthritis medication with lukewarm coffee, check my phone for messages that never came, and sort through the mail that usually brought nothing but bills. But that morning was different. That morning, an envelope slipped from between my gas bill and a grocery store circular. Heavy paper, the kind used for important documents. My arthritic fingers fumbled with the seal, and when I opened it, 2 airline tickets fell onto my scratched linoleum floor. Paris. First class. Departure in 3 days. My heart stopped when I saw the name, Sandra Walsh. My daughter-in-law. And below that, in small print that made my vision blur with more than just my failing eyesight, was my credit card number. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair, the one with the wobbly leg that my son Kevin promised to fix 2 years ago. The tickets trembled in my hands like autumn leaves. $15,000. $15,000 charged to my card without a word, without a conversation, without even the courtesy of a lie. The smell of my morning toast burning filled the kitchen, but I couldn't move. I stared at those tickets, at Sandra's name printed in bold letters, at the date that was rushing toward us like a freight train. 3 days. In 3 days, she would be sipping wine in Montmartre while I counted pennies for my prescription medications. The cruelest part wasn't the money, though $15,000 represented months of my Social Security checks. The cruelest part was the secrecy. The planning. The assumption that I would never notice, never question, never matter enough to be told. I remembered the last time I'd seen Sandra, at little Emma's birthday party 6 weeks ago. She'd hugged me, called me Mom, and told me how grateful she was for everything I did for the family. Her perfume had been expensive, Chanel, I think, and now I wondered if I'd paid for that too. My hands shook as I reached for my phone to call the credit card company. The automated system asked me to press numbers that felt foreign under my trembling fingers. When I finally reached a human voice, a young man named Derek who sounded like he could be my grandson, I could barely form the words. "I need to report fraudulent charges," I whispered. "I'm sorry, ma'am, could you speak louder?" "Fraudulent charges," I repeated, my voice cracking like ice on a winter pond. "Someone used my card without permission." Derek's voice became professionally gentle. "I understand how upsetting this must be. Can you tell me about the charges?" As I described the airline tickets, the dates, the amount, something inside me began to change. With each detail I shared, each number I recited, I felt a small spark of something I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't quite anger yet, I was too hurt for anger. But it was the beginning of recognition. Recognition that I had been wronged. Recognition that I deserved better. Recognition that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to accept this. "Would you like me to cancel these charges, ma'am?" Derek asked. I closed my eyes and saw Sandra's face, her smile when she called me Mom, the way she let me babysit Emma and little Jake without ever asking if I was tired, if my back hurt, if I had other plans. I thought about all the times I'd written checks when they needed money for groceries, car repairs, school supplies. I thought about the birthday cards I sent with cash tucked inside, the Christmas presents I bought on my limited income, the meals I cooked and delivered to their house in Brooklyn when Sandra was too stressed to cook. "Ma'am? Are you still there?" "Yes," I said, and my voice sounded different, stronger. "Yes, please cancel the charges. I'll take care of that right away. The tickets will be automatically canceled, and your account will be credited within 3 to 5 business days." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen as the morning sun climbed higher over the city. The noise from the street below, car horns, sirens, the rumble of delivery trucks, seemed muted, as if I were hearing the world through water. I picked up the tickets again, studying Sandra's name, the flight times, the destination. Paris. The city of lights, of love, of dreams. I'd always wanted to go to Paris. When Harold was alive, before the cancer took him 8 years ago, we used to talk about taking a trip there for our 40th wedding anniversary. We never made it. Harold died 2 months before our anniversary, and I used the money we'd saved for travel to pay for his funeral expenses. I wondered if Sandra knew that. I wondered if she knew about the savings account Harold and I had worked so hard to build, the one I'd gradually emptied over the years to help Kevin and Sandra with their mortgage payments, their car loans, their children's medical bills. I wondered if she cared. The morning passed in a haze of memories and regret. I found myself pulling out photo albums I hadn't looked at in months, turning pages that chronicled a family history I was no longer sure I understood. Here was Sandra on her wedding day, radiant in white silk, hugging me tight and promising I'd always be her mom too. Here was Kevin as a little boy, gap-toothed and grinning, holding the birthday cake I'd stayed up half the night baking because we couldn't afford a store-bought one. Had I raised him to think this was acceptable? Had I been too giving, too forgiving, too willing to sacrifice my own needs for his happiness? The questions circled in my mind like vultures. By afternoon, I'd made a decision that surprised me with its clarity. I wasn't going to tell them what I'd done. Not yet. I would wait. I would see what happened when Sandra arrived at the airport tonight and discovered her tickets had been cancelled. I would see if anyone called me, if anyone apologized, if anyone even noticed. The day stretched endlessly before me. I tried to read, but the words blurred together on the page. I tried to watch television, but everything seemed too loud, too bright, too false. I cleaned my already spotless apartment, dusted furniture that wasn't dusty, organized drawers that were already organized. At 5 o'clock, I made myself a simple dinner, canned soup and crackers, and ate it standing at my kitchen counter, looking out at the city that had been my home for 47 years. Somewhere out there, Sandra was probably packing her suitcase, checking her passport, maybe even picking out the perfect outfit for her first day in Paris. I wondered if she felt any guilt at all, or if taking my money had become so routine she didn't even think about it anymore. At 7:30, Sandra would be catching a taxi to JFK. At 8:15, she'd be checking in for her flight. At 9:45, she'd discover that her dream vacation had vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. I tried to feel satisfaction at the thought, but all I felt was emptiness. This wasn't how I'd wanted to spend my golden years. This wasn't the family I'd dreamed of having when Kevin was small and the future stretched ahead of us full of promise. The phone rang at 9:52. I let it ring 3 times before answering, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Mom? Kevin's voice was strained, confused. Mom, something's wrong with Sandra's tickets. The airline says they've been cancelled. I took a deep breath, surprised by how calm I sounded. Have they? Mom, she's here at the airport. She's been planning this trip for months. There's some kind of mistake. Is there? Mom, what's going on? You sound strange. I closed my eyes and made a choice that would change everything. Kevin, whose credit card was used to buy those tickets? Silence stretched across the phone line like a river I could no longer cross. In that silence, I heard everything, his recognition of what had happened, his embarrassment at being caught, and underneath it all, his assumption that I would fix this, that I would make it right, that I would continue to be the solution to every problem without complaint or consequence. Mom, I can explain, can you? Because I'm very interested to hear how you explain charging $15,000 to my credit card without my knowledge or permission. It was going to be a surprise. For all of us. Sandra's been so stressed with the kids, and I thought, you thought you'd steal from me to pay for your wife's vacation? The word hung between us like a slap. Steal. I'd never used that word before when talking about my son, but suddenly it was the only word that fit. Mom, that's not fair. It's not stealing when it's family. Isn't it? When you take someone's money without permission, what do you call it? I could hear Sandra crying in the background, could hear the busy sounds of the airport, could hear my son's labored breathing as he struggled to find words that would make this right without actually taking responsibility. Mom, please. Just call the credit card company. Tell them it was a mistake. Sandra's here with her luggage, her passport. People are staring. She's humiliated. And there it was. Sandra's humiliation mattered. Sandra's tears mattered. Sandra's vacation mattered. But my financial security, my trust, my right to make decisions about my own money, none of that mattered at all. No, I said quietly. What? No. I won't call them. Those charges were unauthorized. I've reported them as fraudulent because that's what they were. Mom, you're being ridiculous. It's just money. Just money. The words echoed in my head as I thought about the nights I'd lain awake worrying about my utility bills, the medications I'd skipped to save money, the small luxuries I'd denied myself so I could help them whenever they called. Kevin, I'm going to hang up now. Mom, wait. Don't do this. Don't punish Sandra because you're mad at me. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply refusing to pay for a vacation I wasn't invited on, planned without my knowledge, using money taken without my permission. I hung up before he could respond. The apartment felt different after that phone call. Quieter in some ways, but also fuller, as if making space for my own needs had somehow expanded the walls. I sat in my living room, in Harold's old recliner that I'd kept even though it didn't match the rest of my furniture, and I cried. I cried for the innocence I'd lost, for the family I'd thought I had, for the years I'd spent giving and giving without ever asking if anyone noticed or cared. I cried for Harold, who would have been appalled at how our son had turned out. I cried for the grandmother who used to believe that love and sacrifice were the same thing. But underneath the tears, something else was growing. Something that felt strange and unfamiliar but not unwelcome. It felt like relief. The phone rang again at 10:30. Then 11:15. Then midnight. I didn't answer. I unplugged it from the wall and went to bed, sleeping more soundly than I had in months. The next morning brought a text message on my cell phone, which I'd foolishly forgotten to turn off. It was from Sandra. Mom, I'm so sorry about everything. I know how this must look. Kevin should have asked you first. But please, can't we work this out? I've already taken time off work. The kids are staying with my sister. This was supposed to be our chance to reconnect, to heal our marriage. Please don't let your anger at Kevin destroy my one chance at happiness. I read the message 3 times, marveling at its construction. The apology that wasn't really an apology. The request that wasn't really a request. The emotional manipulation wrapped in the language of family love. Our marriage. Our one chance. As if her happiness was my responsibility. As if my money was community property. As if my feelings were secondary to her convenience. I deleted the message without responding. By noon, Kevin was at my door. I saw him through my peephole, pacing in the narrow hallway outside my apartment. He looked tired, rumpled, defeated. For a moment, my maternal instincts kicked in and I almost opened the door. Almost fell back into the familiar pattern of smoothing over conflicts, fixing problems, making everything better for everyone except myself. Instead, I made a cup of tea and sat in my kitchen, listening to him knock and call my name through the door. Mom, I know you're in there. Please, just let me explain. Sandra's devastated. She hasn't stopped crying since last night. I sipped my tea and said nothing. Mom, I'm sorry, okay? I should have asked first. But you always help us when we need money. I thought you'd be happy to do this for Sandra. She works so hard, and she never asks for anything. Never asks for anything. The irony was suffocating. Sandra asked for everything, constantly, just never directly. There were the hints about how stressed she was. The comments about how other families took vacations. The subtle suggestions that maybe I could help with this expense or that emergency. She never asked outright because she never had to. I always offered first. Mom, please don't be like this. Don't be stubborn. You're hurting innocent people. Stubborn. Innocent people. The words buzzed in my ears like angry wasps. When had standing up for myself become stubbornness? When had refusing to be stolen from become hurting innocent people? The knocking stopped around 1 o'clock. I heard Kevin's footsteps going down the hall, heard the elevator doors close, heard the blessed silence that followed. But the relief was temporary. At 3 o'clock, my apartment buzzer rang. It was Emma, my 9-year-old granddaughter. Grandma? Daddy said I should come talk to you. He said you're mad at Mommy and you won't let her go on her trip. I stared at the intercom, my heart breaking. They'd sent a child to do work that grown adults couldn't accomplish. They'd involving Emma in an adult conflict, made her their messenger, their weapon of emotional manipulation. Emma, sweetheart, where are you? Downstairs. Daddy's in the car but he said I should come up and give you this picture I drew. I buzzed her up, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and grief. When Emma knocked on my door, I opened it immediately, gathering her into a hug that was as much for my comfort as hers. She was beautiful, my granddaughter. Long brown hair and pigtails, gap-toothed smile, eyes that sparkled with trust and innocence. She wore her school uniform and carried a backpack covered with unicorn stickers. I made you this, she said, pulling a folded paper from her backpack. Daddy said it might make you feel better. I unfolded the paper and found a crayon drawing of our family. There was me, much taller than I actually was, with a huge smile and arms spread wide. There were Kevin and Sandra, holding hands. There were Emma and her little brother Jake, drawn in bright colors with exaggerated features. Above us all, in shaky letters, Emma had written, I love my family. It's beautiful, sweetheart, I said, and I meant it. Thank you. Daddy says you're mad because Mommy wanted to go on a plane. I knelt down to Emma's eye level, looking into her innocent face and trying to find words that would be truthful without burdening her with adult problems. Emma, do you know what it means when someone takes something that doesn't belong to them? She nodded solemnly. That's stealing. We learned about it in school. Stealing is wrong. That's right. And sometimes grown-ups make mistakes too. Sometimes they take things without asking first. Did Mommy take something? I paused, weighing my words carefully. Mommy used Grandma's money to buy something without asking Grandma first. That wasn't right. Emma frowned, thinking this over with the seriousness only children can bring to moral questions. Should she say sorry? I think so. Don't you? Yeah. When I take Jake's toys without asking, Mommy makes me say sorry and give them back. The simple logic of childhood cut through all the adult complications and excuses. Emma understood something that her parents seemed to have forgotten. that taking things without permission was wrong, regardless of the relationship between the people involved. Grandma, are you going to make Mommy give back the money? The money's already been given back, sweetheart. Mommy won't be taking her trip. Is that why everybody's sad? Everyone's sad. Not everyone's sorry. Not everyone's apologetic. Just sad, as if this were a tragedy rather than a consequence. Sometimes when people do wrong things, there are results that make them sad. That's how we learn to make better choices. Emma nodded as if this made perfect sense to her, which it did. Children understand justice in a way that adults often forget. Grandma, will you come to my school play next week? We're doing Peter Pan and I'm Wendy. I wouldn't miss it for the world. She hugged me again, and I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and trying to memorize the feeling of being needed for something pure and simple, not for my money, not for my services, just for my presence and love. After Emma left, I sat with her drawing spread on my kitchen table. In her innocent artwork, we were all smiling, all connected, all part of something bigger than ourselves. It was the family I'd always dreamed of having, the family I'd thought we were. But dreams and reality don't always match. That evening, Sandra called. Margaret, please pick up. I know you're screening your calls. I almost didn't answer. Almost let her voice disappear into the electronic void like all the others. But something in her tone was different. Less demanding, more uncertain. Hello, Sandra. Margaret, thank you for picking up. I need to say something. I waited. I was wrong. Kevin was wrong. We should have asked you first. The words sounded rehearsed, as if she'd practiced them in the mirror. But they were better than anything I'd heard from Kevin. Yes, you should have. I know this might sound hollow now, but I really did want you to come with us. Kevin said you hate flying, but I thought maybe if I planned something really special, a first-class trip to somewhere beautiful, you might change your mind. You thought that, but you never asked me? Kevin said it would be better as a surprise. He said you'd worry about the money if you knew how much it cost. Of course Kevin had said that. It was easier to blame the surprise angle than to admit they'd hoped I'd never find out at all. Sandra, in 15 years of marriage to my son, have you ever known me to refuse to help when you asked? Silence stretched across the connection. No, she said finally. You've always been generous. Then why didn't you ask this time? More silence. I don't know, she whispered. I honestly don't know. But I knew. They hadn't asked because they'd stopped seeing me as a person whose opinion mattered. They hadn't asked because they'd gotten used to having access to my resources without accountability. They hadn't asked because asking would have required acknowledging that the money belonged to me, not them. Sandra, I need you to understand something. This isn't about the vacation. This is about respect. I know. I do know that now. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're only sorry because you got caught. If those tickets hadn't come to my address by mistake, would you ever have told me about this? Another long pause. I don't know, she said again, and at least this time she sounded honest. That's what I thought. Margaret, what can I do? How can I fix this? The question hung in the air between us. How do you fix 15 years of taking someone for granted? How do you undo the slow erosion of respect that happens when someone becomes the family ATM rather than the family matriarch? I don't know if you can, I said. I need some time to think. How much time? Always the demand for certainty, for timelines, for guarantees. Even an apology, Sandra couldn't resist trying to control the situation. I don't know, Sandra. I honestly don't know. I hung up feeling more confused than ever. Sandra's apology had seemed genuine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was motivated more by the cancellation of her vacation than by any real understanding of what she'd done wrong. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my sister Ruth in New Jersey. Ruth was 2 years older than me, twice as sharp, and half as diplomatic. She'd never particularly liked Kevin, and she'd been openly suspicious of Sandra from the beginning. When I'd told her about the constant requests for money over the years, Ruth had said things I hadn't wanted to hear. Maggie, she said now, please tell me you didn't call to ask for advice about forgiving them. How did you know what happened? Lucky guess. Plus, you only call me when Kevin has done something that would make a rational person furious but that you're trying to find ways to excuse. I told her about the tickets, about my conversation with the credit card company, about Sandra's collapse at the airport and Kevin's accusations of stubbornness. Ruth listened without interrupting, which wasn't like her. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Ruth? Are you there? I'm here. I'm just trying to decide whether to say, I told you so, or, I'm proud of you. What do you mean? Maggie, for 15 years I've watched you enable those two. For 15 years I've bitten my tongue while you made excuses for behavior that would be unacceptable from strangers, let alone family. They're not bad people, Ruth. They're just what? Just used to having a mother-in-law who pays for everything without question? Just accustomed to treating your bank account like their personal emergency fund? Her words stung because they were true. They have 2 children, Ruth. Kevin's salary doesn't stretch far in New York. Kevin's salary would stretch a lot farther if he and Sandra learned to live within their means instead of relying on you to subsidize their lifestyle. I want to help them. They're my family. Help them? Maggie, you're not helping them. You're crippling them. You're teaching them that actions don't have consequences because grandma will always bail them out. You're teaching Emma and Jake that it's normal to treat elderly family members like personal ATMs. The truth of Ruth's words settled over me like a heavy blanket. What should I do? What you did. You stood up for yourself. You said no. For the first time in 15 years, you treated yourself like a person whose feelings matter. But Sandra sounded genuinely sorry. I'm sure she did. Sorry that her vacation got cancelled. Sorry that she got caught. But Maggie, if she were genuinely sorry, really sorry, she'd be finding ways to pay you back, not finding ways to convince you to pay again. After I hung up with Ruth, I sat in my dark living room and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Sandra was probably unpacking her suitcases. Kevin was probably figuring out how to manage their disappointment. Emma and Jake were probably wondering why mommy had been crying. And I was sitting alone in my apartment, feeling like the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. The next few days passed in a strange sort of limbo. Kevin called twice, leaving voicemails that swung between anger and pleading. Sandra sent text messages that grew increasingly desperate. Emma's school play was in 3 days, and I found myself looking forward to it as the one normal thing in a world that had suddenly become foreign. On Thursday morning, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Jennifer Martinez had an office in a brownstone building in the village, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture that made me feel immediately at ease. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes and an easy smile. What brings you here today, Margaret? I told her everything. The years of financial requests, the gradual erosion of boundaries, the airplane tickets, the family's reaction to my refusal to pay. I told her about my confusion, my guilt, my fear that I was destroying my family over money that I could technically afford to lose. Dr. Martinez listened without judgment, taking occasional notes but mostly just giving me her full attention in a way I hadn't experienced from my family in years. Margaret, can I ask you something? When your family needs money, how do they usually approach you? Well, they call and explain the situation. The car needs repairs, or Emma needs something for school, or their credit card payment is higher than expected. And how do you usually respond? I help them. That's what families do. Always? I thought about it. Yes, always. I've never said no to a request for help. Never? Never. And in 15 years of marriage, has Kevin or Sandra ever paid you back? Ever returned money they borrowed? The question hung in the air like smoke. I tried to remember a single instance of repayment, a single month when they'd said they could manage without help, a single time when they'd acknowledged the ongoing sacrifice I was making for their comfort. No, I said quietly. They've never paid me back. But I never expected them to. Why not? Because they're family. Because I love them. Because I want them to be happy. I understand that. But help me understand something else. In this family dynamic, who takes care of your needs? My needs. Yes. Who makes sure you're happy? Who worries about your financial security? Who sacrifices for your comfort? I sat in that comfortable chair and realized I didn't have an answer. In my family, love flowed in one direction only. From me to them. My needs, my happiness, my security were afterthoughts at best. Margaret, I want you to try an exercise. I want you to imagine that you had a friend, another 72-year-old woman, and she told you this exact same story. Her son and daughter-in-law had been taking money from her for 15 years without ever paying it back. They'd just charged $15,000 to her credit card without permission. When she refused to pay for their vacation, they called her stubborn and accused her of hurting innocent people. What would you tell this friend? The answer came immediately. I'd tell her to run. I'd tell her that her family was taking advantage of her. I'd tell her that she deserved better. And yet when it's happening to you? When it's happening to me, I make excuses for them. Dr. Martinez nodded. It's much easier to see unhealthy patterns when we're looking at someone else's life. Much harder to acknowledge them when they're our own. So what do I do now? I can't unfairly refuse to help my family. Is it unfair to expect to be asked before your money is spent? Is it unfair to want your financial boundaries respected? Is it unfair to hope that occasionally someone might consider your needs instead of just their wants? Put that way, it sounded so reasonable. So obvious. Why hadn't I seen it before? Margaret, I think you've been confusing love with enabling. Love involves mutual respect, consideration, and care. What you've described sounds more like a relationship where you provide resources and they provide conditional affection in return. Conditional affection. The phrase hit me like a physical blow, partially because it was so accurate. They do love me, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I wondered if I believed them. I'm sure they do, in their way. But healthy love doesn't require one person to sacrifice everything while the other person sacrifices nothing. I left Dr. Martinez's office with a lot to think about and an appointment for the following week. As I walked through the village and caught the subway back to my apartment, I found myself seeing my life from a different angle. When Kevin was little, after his father left, I'd worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. I'd sacrificed my own dreams to focus on his needs, his education, his future. I'd told myself that was what good mothers did. And maybe it was, when he was a child. But Kevin was 43 years old now. He had a college degree I'd helped pay for. He had a job, a wife, a house. At what point does helping become hindering? At what point does sacrificing become enabling? Emma's school play was the next evening. I spent Friday afternoon debating whether to go. Part of me wanted to maintain my distance, to let the family experience the consequences of their actions without relief. But the bigger part of me knew that Emma was innocent in all this, and I'd promised to be there. The play was held in the school gymnasium, with brown folding chairs set up in rows and a makeshift stage created from wooden platforms. Parents filled the space with cameras and excited chatter, and for a moment I felt a familiar warmth at being part of something larger than myself. I found a seat in the back and watched as Emma took the stage as Wendy Darling. She was radiant in her blue dress and hair ribbons, delivering her lines with the earnest concentration that only children bring to make-believe. When she sang Your Mother and Mine, I felt tears prick my eyes. During intermission, Kevin found me. Mom, I'm glad you came. I promised Emma I'd be here. He sat in the empty chair beside me, and for a moment we watched the other families milling around, buying cookies from the PTA bake sale and taking pictures of their costumed children. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said. About the tickets. I waited. You were right. I should have asked you first. Sandra and we got used to assuming you'd always say yes. It wasn't a complete apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I'd received from him yet. Kevin, why didn't you ask me? He was quiet for a long time. Honestly? Because I was afraid you'd ask questions about why we needed such an expensive trip. About why we couldn't save up for it ourselves. About why everything always seems to be an emergency with us. And what would you have answered? I don't know. That's the problem. Sandra and we've gotten into a pattern where we spend first and worry about paying later. We tell ourselves we'll figure it out, we'll cut back, we'll be more careful. But then something else comes up, or we want something else, and it's easier to ask you than to actually change how we live. The honesty was startling. And painful. Kevin, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to be around forever. And even while I'm here, I can't keep subsidizing your lifestyle indefinitely. I know. I do know that. It's hard to change when you've gotten used to a certain way of living. It's going to be harder to change when I'm not here at all. The lights dimmed, signaling the start of the second act. As we watched Emma fly away to Neverland with Peter Pan, I wondered if my family would ever learn to fly on their own, or if they'd always need me to provide the fairy dust. After the play, Emma ran up to me with her face still flushed from the stage lights. Grandma, did you see me fly? I did, sweetheart. You were beautiful. Did you like my song? It was my favorite part. She hugged me tight, and over her head, I saw Sandra approaching hesitantly. Margaret, thank you for coming. It means so much to Emma. I promised her I'd be here. Could we talk sometime? Not about the trip. Just talk? I looked at my daughter-in-law, really looked at her. She looked tired, older than her 38 years. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there when she'd married Kevin, and her smile seemed forced. I'm not ready yet, Sandra. She nodded, disappointment flickering across her face. I understand. I want you to know that I never meant to hurt you. I know that doesn't change anything, but it's true. Maybe it was true. Maybe Sandra had genuinely thought she was planning a lovely family surprise rather than committing theft. But intentions, I was learning, mattered less than actions. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for myself. Not practical shopping, not groceries or household supplies or birthday gifts for family members. I went to Bloomingdale's and bought a dress I didn't need in a color that made me feel younger. I went to a jewelry store and bought myself earrings that weren't on sale. I went to a bookstore and bought 3 novels by authors I'd never tried before. The total amount I spent was less than $200. It was a fraction of what I'd spent on Kevin and Sandra's family over the years. But it felt revolutionary. At home, I tried on my new dress and looked at myself in the full-length mirror in my bedroom. The woman looking back at me was familiar but somehow different. She looked like someone who mattered. Someone whose preferences and desires were worth considering. On Monday, I did something even more revolutionary. I opened a new savings account at a different bank and transferred half of my checking account balance into it. The new account was in my name only, with no beneficiaries, no joint account holders, no emergency contacts who could access it if something happened to me. It was my money. My security. My choice. Tuesday brought a call from Kevin. Mom, Sandra told me you're still upset. I know the timing is terrible, but I need to ask you something. The familiar dread settled in my stomach. Another request. Another emergency. Another assumption that my money was their money. What is it, Kevin? Emma needs braces. The orthodontist says if we don't start treatment now, she'll need oral surgery later. The total cost is going to be about $8,000, and our insurance only covers partial. Emma's braces. A legitimate need for my granddaughter's health and future. The kind of expense that would have sent me rushing to my checkbook just a week ago. And I was wondering if you could help us with it. I know the timing isn't great, but Emma's mouth can't wait for us to work things out. There it was. The emotional manipulation wrapped in genuine need. Emma's health was important, but Kevin's request was designed to make me feel guilty for hesitating, selfish for considering my own financial security, unreasonable for expecting things to be different. Kevin, what's your plan for paying for Emma's braces? Well, we thought we could set up a payment plan with the orthodontist, and maybe you could help with the down payment, and we could pay you back over time. Pay me back over time. The same promise I'd been hearing for 15 years. How much is the down payment? $3,000. $3,000. Not as much as the Paris tickets, but still a significant amount of money for someone living on Social Security. Kevin, in 15 years of marriage, you've never paid me back for any loan I've given you. Why should I believe this time will be different? Mom, this is different. This is Emma's healthcare. Every request is different, Kevin. Every request is urgent. Every request is for something important. But the result is always the same: I give you money that I never see again. Mom, you're being unfair. We're not drug addicts or gamblers. We use the money for legitimate things. I never said you weren't. But using money wisely and paying it back are two different things. Kevin was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was strained. So you're saying no? You're going to let Emma suffer because you're mad at us about Sandra's vacation? The guilt hit me like a wave. Emma's sweet face, gap-toothed smile, the trust in her eyes when she'd given me her drawing. How could I let personal conflict affect my granddaughter's well-being? But then I heard Dr. Martinez's voice in my head, asking about boundaries and respect and mutual consideration. Kevin, I'm not saying no to Emma's braces. I'm saying no to being your automatic solution to every financial problem without acknowledgement or accountability. What does that mean? I took a deep breath. It means that if you want my help with Emma's braces, you need to present me with a real plan for paying the money back. Not promises, not good intentions. A plan with dates and amounts and actual commitment. Mom, that's ridiculous. We're family. Yes, we are. And family members should be able to treat each other with respect. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've been through together, you're making Emma's healthcare conditional on some kind of business arrangement. There it was again. The twist that made my reasonable request seem unreasonable. The implication that asking for respect was somehow betraying family loyalty. Kevin, I'm going to hang up now. When you're ready to have an adult conversation about this, call me back. Mom, wait, I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't from fear or uncertainty. It was from adrenaline. For the first time in 15 years, I'd held my ground when Kevin tried to manipulate me. For the first time, I'd insisted on being treated like a partner in decisions about my own money rather than just an ATM machine. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. That afternoon, I did something that surprised even me. I called Emma's school and asked to speak with the guidance counselor. Miss Parker, this is Margaret Walsh, Emma Walsh's grandmother. I was wondering if you could tell me anything about the orthodontic program at the school. Mrs. Walsh, I'm not sure I understand what you mean. I know some schools work with local orthodontists to provide reduced-cost treatment for students who need it. I'm wondering if that's something that might be available for Emma. Let me check on that and call you back. Ms. Parker called back an hour later with information about a program that provided orthodontic care at significant discounts for qualifying families. The total cost for Emma's treatment would be about $3,000 instead of $8,000, and payment plans were available at no interest. I called Kevin with the information. Mom, that's great, but we'd still need help with the down payment. How much? $500. $500. A manageable amount. A reasonable request. Kevin, I'll give Emma $500 for her braces. Thank you, Mom. I knew you'd come through. But I'm giving it to Emma directly. And I want a written agreement that this is a gift, not a loan, so there are no misunderstandings later. Mom, that's not necessary. It's just $500. It's necessary for me. If you want my help, those are my terms. Kevin agreed, though I could hear the reluctance in his voice. The next day, I met Emma at the ice cream parlor near her school. She was excited about getting braces, chattering about the different colored bands she could choose and how her friend Sarah said braces made you look more grown up. Emma, Grandma has some money to help with your braces, I said, handing her an envelope with $500 cash inside. This is a gift from me to you, because I love you and I want you to have a beautiful, healthy smile. Thank you, Grandma. Should I give this to Mommy? You can, but I want you to know that this money is specifically for your braces. Not for anything else. It's to help make sure your teeth are taken care of. Emma nodded solemnly. I understand. It's braces money. That's right. And Emma, if anyone ever tells you that Grandma doesn't love you because she won't pay for something, you remember that love isn't about money. Love is about spending time together, caring about each other, and treating each other with kindness. Okay? Okay, Grandma. I love you too. Sitting in that ice cream parlor, sharing a sundae with my granddaughter, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. I was helping someone I loved in a way that felt healthy and sustainable. I was maintaining my boundaries while still showing care. I was modeling for Emma what respectful relationships looked like. It was a small step, but it felt like a giant leap. That evening, Sandra called. Margaret, thank you for helping with Emma's braces. Kevin told me about the program you found. We had no idea something like that existed. You're welcome. Margaret, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. About the tickets, about how we've been treating you. I want to make some changes. I waited. I want to start paying you back. Not for everything all at once, but gradually. I've been looking at our budget, and I think we can manage $200 a month if we cut back on some things. $200 a month. It wasn't much, considering they owed me thousands, but it was something. More importantly, it was acknowledgement. Sandra, what things would you cut back on? Well, we're going to cancel our cable TV package and just keep internet. We're going to eat out less and cook more at home. I'm going to start buying generic groceries instead of brand names. Little things that add up. They were little things, but they represented something bigger. They represented choosing responsibility over comfort, accountability over convenience. And Kevin is okay with this? Kevin is adjusting. He's not happy about the changes, but he knows they're necessary. Sandra, I need you to understand something. If you commit to paying me back, I need you to actually follow through. Not for 2 months, not until something else comes up. I need consistency. I understand. And Margaret, I want you to know that I've told Kevin we can't ask you for money anymore. Not unless it's a genuine emergency, and even then, only after we've exhausted all other options. It was more than I'd expected from Sandra. More accountability than Kevin had offered. More change than I dared to hope for. Thank you, Sandra. That means a lot to me. I know I have a lot to prove to you. I know this is going to take time. But I want to try. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about forgiveness. Not the quick, easy forgiveness that sweeps problems under the rug and pretends they never happened. Real forgiveness. The kind that acknowledges hurt but chooses to move forward anyway. The kind that sets new boundaries while keeping hearts open. I wasn't there yet. The hurt was too fresh, the pattern too established, the trust too damaged. But Sandra's call was a beginning. 2 weeks later, I received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was $200 in cash and a note written in Sandra's handwriting, first payment. Thank you for your patience. I stared at that money for a long time. It represented something more valuable than its dollar amount. It represented the possibility of change. The possibility that my family could learn to see me as a person rather than just a resource. I deposited the money in my special savings account and marked the date on my calendar. The next month, another envelope arrived. Another $200. Another step toward a healthier relationship. Kevin, for his part, seemed to be struggling with the new dynamic. He was polite when we talked, but distant. I could feel his resentment over the changes, his discomfort with having to treat me as an equal rather than as a perpetual parent. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that Kevin's reaction was normal. When we change the rules in long-established relationships, the other people involved often feel angry or confused. They've gotten comfortable with the old patterns, even if those patterns weren't healthy. He acts like I've betrayed him. In his mind, maybe you have. If Kevin has spent 15 years believing that your money was available to him whenever he needed it, your new boundaries probably feel like rejection. But I'm not rejecting him. I'm just asking for respect. I know that. But Kevin may not be able to see the difference yet. Change is hard, Margaret. Even good change can feel like loss. 3 months after the airplane ticket incident, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Walsh? This is Dr. Peterson from Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. Your son Kevin gave us your name as his emergency contact. My heart stopped. Is he okay? What happened? He's going to be fine, but he was in a car accident this afternoon. Nothing too serious, a concussion and some bruises, but we're keeping him overnight for observation. He's been asking for you. I was at the hospital within an hour, my heart pounding with all the familiar terror that comes with getting calls about your children, no matter how old they are. Kevin was awake when I arrived, looking pale and shaken but alert. Sandra was there with Emma and Jake, all of them clustered around his hospital bed. "Mom," he said when he saw me, and his voice cracked slightly. "I'm okay. The doctor says I'm okay." I hugged him carefully, mindful of his injuries, and felt 15 years of conflict momentarily disappear. In that moment, he wasn't the man who'd taken advantage of me financially. He was just my son, hurt and scared and needing his mother. What happened? Someone ran a red light and hit my car. The other driver's insurance is going to cover everything, but the car is totaled. A totaled car meant Kevin would need transportation to get to work, to get the kids to school, to handle the daily necessities of life. It meant another emergency, another need, another opportunity for the old patterns to reassert themselves. I could see the thought occurring to Sandra too. The worried glance she shot in my direction, the way she bit her lip as if calculating costs and options. But Kevin surprised me. "Mom, I need to figure out how to get a rental car until the insurance settlement comes through. I was wondering if you could recommend a good rental company." Not a request for money. Not an assumption that I would solve the problem. Just a request for advice. "Enterprise has always been reliable for me," I said. "And most insurance companies have partnerships with rental agencies that help with paperwork. Thanks. I'll call them tomorrow." I stayed at the hospital until Kevin was discharged the next morning, helping Sandra get him settled at home and making sure he had everything he needed. But I didn't offer money, didn't suggest that I could help with expenses, didn't fall back into the old patterns. And Kevin didn't ask. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. That afternoon, as I rode the subway home, I thought about how crisis often reveals character. A year ago, Kevin's accident would have triggered an automatic response from me, offering to pay for whatever was needed, taking charge of problems that weren't mine to solve, sacrificing my own resources without question or recognition. Now, I was able to offer love and support without enabling dependence. I was able to be helpful without being taken advantage of. It felt like a kind of freedom I'd never experienced before. Summer arrived with its usual chaos of open fire hydrants and air conditioners humming in windows and the smell of hot pavement after afternoon thunderstorms. I bought myself a small air conditioning unit for my bedroom, something I'd been putting off for years because the expense had seemed frivolous. With my new savings account growing, with Sandra's monthly payments arriving regularly, with Kevin learning to solve his own problems, I began to feel something I'd almost forgotten: financial security. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't worried about making it through the month. For the first time in longer than that, I wasn't automatically calculating how much I could afford to give away if someone needed help. In July, I did something I'd been dreaming about since Harold died. I booked a trip. Not to Paris, that dream belonged to someone else now. But to Maine, to a small coastal town where Harold and I had honeymooned 44 years ago. Just for a long weekend, just for myself, but it represented something enormous. I was planning a future that belonged to me. I told Emma about the trip when she came to visit me after her first orthodontist appointment. Her new braces gleamed silver when she smiled, and she was proud of the progress band she'd earned from the orthodontist for good dental hygiene. "Wow, Grandma. You're going on vacation by yourself?" "I am. Are you scared?" It was a child's question, but it deserved an honest answer. "A little bit. But sometimes being a little bit scared is how we know we're doing something important. Will you send me a postcard?" "Of course. With lobsters on it?" "Definitely with lobsters." Emma helped me pack my small suitcase, carefully folding my new clothes and making sure I had enough books for the 3-day trip. Her enthusiasm reminded me of how exciting travel could be when it wasn't tinged with resentment or guilt. "Grandma, I'm proud of you for going on an adventure." Out of the mouths of babes. Emma was proud of me. When was the last time I'd been proud of myself? The trip to Maine was everything I'd hoped for and more. I stayed in a bed and breakfast that overlooked the harbor, ate lobster rolls on a pier where seagulls swooped and called, walked along rocky beaches where waves crashed against ancient stones. I thought about Harold, about the young couple we'd been when we'd first visited this place. I thought about the dreams we'd had then, the future we'd planned together, the life we'd built before cancer stole him away. But I also thought about the present. About the woman I was becoming at 72, discovering independence and self-worth after decades of defining myself only in relation to other people's needs. On my last morning in Maine, I sat on a bench overlooking the water and called Ruth. "Maggie. How's your great adventure going?" "It's wonderful. Ruth, I feel like myself again for the first time in years." "I'm so glad. You sound different. Lighter." "I feel lighter. I feel like I've been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there, and suddenly it's gone." "The weight of other people's expectations?" "Exactly. The weight of always being responsible for everyone else's problems and happiness." And Kevin and Sandra? How are things with them? Better. Different. Sandra's been paying me back, little by little. Kevin's learning to handle his own emergencies. We're all still figuring out what this new normal looks like. Are you happy with the changes? I watched a sailboat navigate the harbor, its white sails bright against the blue sky. Yes. I think I am. For the first time in years, I'm happy. When I returned from Maine, there was an envelope waiting in my mailbox. Sandra's monthly payment, right on schedule. But there was also something else, a card from Emma with a picture she'd drawn of a lobster wearing sunglasses. Inside, in her careful third-grade handwriting, she'd written, "I hope you had fun on your adventure, Grandma. Love, Emma. P.S. Mommy and Daddy said you're very brave." Mommy and Daddy said I was brave. Not stubborn, not selfish, not unreasonable. Brave. Maybe they were starting to understand after all. That fall brought Emma's birthday, and for the first time in years, I looked forward to a family gathering without anxiety. I bought Emma a gift that had nothing to do with what anyone else wanted or needed, an art set that I'd chosen because I'd noticed her interest in drawing. The party was in Kevin and Sandra's backyard, with balloons and cake and the chaotic joy that only children's birthdays can bring. I sat at a picnic table with the other adults, sipping apple cider and watching Emma open her presents. When she got to my gift, her face lit up. "Grandma, this is perfect. Look, it has real watercolor paints. I thought you might like it. Can we paint together sometime?" "I'd love that." Later, as the party wound down and Kevin was cleaning up paper plates and deflated balloons, Sandra approached me. "Margaret, I have something for you." She handed me an envelope, thicker than her usual monthly payments. Inside was $400 and a note, caught up and a little bit ahead. "Thank you for your patience while I figure out how to be better. $400 instead of the usual $200. Sandra was ahead of schedule, ahead of her commitment, making an extra effort to repair the damage that had been done. "You didn't have to do this," I said. "I wanted to. You've been more generous with us than we deserved, and more patient with our process than we had any right to expect. I want to show you that your patience means something." I looked around the backyard at my family, Kevin putting away folding chairs, Emma showing her new art supplies to Jake, Sandra gathering up gift wrap and putting it in recycling bags. For the first time in years, they looked like people I wanted to spend time with rather than people I felt obligated to help. "Sandra, I'm proud of the changes you've made. They weren't easy changes. Kevin and I had to have some difficult conversations about how we've been living, how we've been treating you. We had to admit some things about ourselves that weren't comfortable. Growing never is comfortable. No, but it's worth it. Margaret, I hope you know that we love you. Not for what you can do for us, but for who you are. It took me too long to make sure you knew the difference." Driving home that evening, I thought about the difference between being needed and being valued. For most of my adult life, I'd confused the two. I'd thought that being needed was the same as being loved, that being useful was the same as being important. Now I understood that real love doesn't require constant sacrifice. Real love involves mutual respect, shared responsibility, and genuine care for each other's well-being. It took a crisis to teach my family those lessons, but maybe that's what crises are for, to shake us out of patterns that aren't working and force us to find better ways. Winter came early that year, with snow in November and icy winds that rattled my apartment windows. But I was warmer than I'd been in years. My savings account had grown to a comfortable cushion. Sandra's payments were arriving consistently. Kevin was calling just to chat, not just to ask for help. And most importantly, I was learning to enjoy my own company. For Christmas, I did something unprecedented. Instead of hosting dinner in my tiny apartment, struggling to fit everyone around my small table and exhausting myself with elaborate meal preparation, I made reservations at a nice restaurant and invited everyone to join me as my guests. It was a small thing, but it marked a fundamental shift in how I approached family gatherings. Instead of sacrificing my own comfort to provide for everyone else, I was finding ways to bring us together that didn't require me to exhaust myself. Kevin looked surprised when I told him about the reservation. "Mom, you don't have to do that. We can come to your place like always. I want to try something different this year. I want to enjoy Christmas dinner instead of spending it in the kitchen." At the restaurant, Emma was fascinated by the real cloth napkins and the server who kept filling our water glasses. Jake was delighted by the bread basket that seemed to magically refill itself. Sandra and Kevin relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years, not having to worry about cooking or cleaning up. And I sat at the head of the table, wearing my new dress and earrings, feeling like the matriarch I'd always been but had never been allowed to be. "Mom," Kevin said as we shared dessert, "this was a great idea. Why didn't we ever do this before?" Why indeed? Because it would have cost money that I'd convinced myself I couldn't spare while giving away thousands to subsidize their lifestyle. Because I'd been so focused on meeting everyone else's needs that I'd never considered what might meet mine. "I guess I never thought of it before," I said. But that wasn't quite true. I'd thought of it many times. I just hadn't believed I deserved it. Now I did. Spring arrived with its promise of renewal, and I felt like I was experiencing my own rebirth. I was 73 years old, and for the first time in decades, I was excited about the future. Sandra's final payment to me came in April, exactly 1 year after the airplane ticket incident that had changed everything. With the money was a card signed by the whole family, thanking me for my patience and forgiveness. But I was the one who should have been thankful. Thankful for a crisis that had forced us all to grow. Thankful for the opportunity to rediscover my own worth. Thankful for a family that had been willing to change, even when change was difficult. That summer, I took another trip, this time to San Francisco to visit Harold's sister, whom I hadn't seen in 5 years. I walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, rode cable cars through the hills, ate excellent seafood and watched the fog roll in over the bay. And I did it all without guilt, without anxiety about the expense, without worrying about whether I should be home in case someone needed me. I did it because I wanted to. Because I deserved to. Because at 73, I was finally learning to put myself first occasionally without feeling selfish. On my last day in California, I sat in a cafe overlooking the Pacific Ocean and wrote postcards to Emma and Jake. For Emma, I chose one with sea lions sunning themselves on a pier. For Jake, one with a cable car climbing a steep hill. But I also wrote a postcard to myself, something I'd never done before. On it, I wrote, "Margaret, you are braver than you knew, stronger than you imagined, and worthy of love that doesn't require you to earn it. Don't forget. Love, you." I mailed it to my apartment, and when it arrived a week later, I put it on my refrigerator next to Emma's drawings and family photos. Now, as I sit here in my apartment looking out at the Hudson River, I think about how much can change in a year. How a moment of betrayal can become a catalyst for transformation. How saying no to being taken advantage of can open up space for genuine love to grow. My relationship with my family isn't perfect now. Kevin still sometimes sulks when he can't solve a problem by asking me for money. Sandra still occasionally forgets that I have my own needs and preferences. Emma and Jake are still children who require guidance and boundaries. But we've learned to treat each other with respect. We've learned that love isn't about one person sacrificing everything for everyone else. We've learned that healthy relationships require effort from all parties involved. Most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late to change patterns that aren't working. It's never too late to demand better treatment from the people who claim to love you. It's never too late to discover your own worth. The woman I am today would barely recognize the woman I was 2 years ago. The woman who spent her days anxiously checking her bank balance to see how much she could afford to give away. The woman who measured her worth by how useful she could be to other people. The woman who had forgotten that she deserved to be happy too. I still help my family when they need it. But now it's a choice, not an obligation. Now it comes with boundaries and expectations. Now it's balanced by attention to my own needs and dreams. I still love them deeply. But now I love myself too. If you're listening to this story and seeing pieces of your own life reflected back at you, I want you to know something. You deserve better. You deserve respect. You deserve love that doesn't require you to earn it by sacrificing yourself. It's never too late to change the rules. It's never too late to say enough. It's never too late to discover that you matter too. Have you ever found yourself in a similar situation? Have you ever discovered that your love and generosity were being taken for granted by the people closest to you? Please share your story in the comments below. And if this story gave you something to think about, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones that are hardest to have, and your support helps me continue opening my heart and sharing these difficult truths. Remember, you are worth fighting for, even if the person you have to fight is your own family. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for allowing me to share this painful but ultimately liberating journey with you. And thank you for reminding me that none of us have to face these challenges alone. Until next time, take care of yourselves. You matter more than you know.